AP fact-check: little truth in Trump claims on Russia, autos. Washington. President Donald Trump got right to it in his Michigan rally Thursday night, greatly exaggerating what's happening in the auto industry and repeating false claims about Special Counsel Robert Mueller's conclusions in the Russia investigation. Here's a look at his rhetoric during and before his Grand Rapids rally. Russia investigation. Trump after the facts: Mueller did not vindicate Trump in total in the Russia probe. Mueller's exact words in the report, as quoted by Attorney General William Barr, say while the 4-page summary by Barr released Sunday notes Mueller did not draw. Barr's summary also notes that Mueller did not find that the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with Russia to tip the 2016 presidential election in Trump's favor. To establish a crime, the summary signed by Barr gave the bottom line only as he and his deputies saw it. Democrats are put Trump on electoral votes in the 2016 election. The facts: no. He won 300. Trump were. The facts: there is very little truth in those remarks. The only automaker announcing plans to reopen a plant in Michigan is Fiat Chrysler, which is restarting an old engine plant to build 3-row SUVs. It's been planning to. Automakers have made announcements about new models being built in the state, but no other factories have been reopened. Ford stopped building. GM, meantime, is closing factories in Ohio and Maryland. Trump can plausibly claim that his policies have encouraged some activity in the domestic auto industry. Corporate tax cut, but automakers have not been pouring. Fiat Chrysler has been planning the SUVs for several years and has been looking at expansion in the Detroit area, where it has unused building space and an abundant, trainable automotive labor force. Normally, it takes at least 3 years for an automaker to plan a new vehicle, which is the case with the 3-row Jeep Grand Cherokee and the larger Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer SUVs that will fill the restarting Detroit area plant and an existing one. Several years ago, Detroit automakers usually build larger vehicles in the U.S. because the profit margins are high enough to cover the higher wages paid there versus Mexico or another lower-cost country. Trump if. The facts: the White House, executive branch agencies like Health and Human Services, and Republicans in Congress do not have a comprehensive plan to provide for. Trump's recent budget called for repealing Obamacare and setting hard limits on federal spending for Medicaid, which covers low-income people. Some Republican. Trump's budget also called for hundreds of billions of dollars in Medicare cuts to hospitals and other service providers, a non-starter with lawmakers in Congress worried about re-election next year. The Supreme Court has upheld the health care law twice in previous challenges. The 5 justices. Some senior Republicans have made no secret of their dismay with the president's pivot back to repealing the Obama health law. Congressional Republicans are generally trying to steer away from Obamacare spats. Some are trying to. Iowa Republican Senior Charles Grassley. The Trump administration has joined the side of Texas and other Republican-led states in a lawsuit calling for full repeal of the health law. Grassley noted, if the Supreme Court overturns the law, Congress would have to act, said Grassley. But Associated Press writers Ricardo Alonso Zaldivar in Washington and Tom Krisher in Detroit contributed to this report. Find AP fact checks at http://apne.ws/2kbx8bed. Follow @upfactcheck on Twitter https://twitter.com/upfactcheck.
Raindrop, drip, drop top, top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.